In the interest of keeping this list here fair, I'm going to not include Megas or Z moves, because 4 of these guys have Megas and 1 of them has an exclusive Z move. When it comes to ranking the pseudo-legends from weakest to strongest, I'm going to go the usual, where I go into how good they are in a fight and why. You know the drill. Stats, move pulls, typing, the whole shebang. Although, Dragon type is gonna have to be something I need to creatively work around, not saying over and over again, since most of these are Dragon type. But we'll get there when we get there. I also want to go over the pseudo by themselves, since yeah, with the correct teammates, some of these Pokemon become ridiculously good. Tyranitar Sand Support and Baxcalibur paired with Alola Ninetales are 2 really good examples. Before we hop into that though, Mismagius and Heartgold Rando Hardcore Nuzlocke, link will be in the description below. With that out of the way, let's get started with our weakest pseudo-legendary. And to the surprise of no one, the Goodras. Kalos Goodra is hardly a Pokemon. Its only redeeming qualities are that it can play Scald and Toxic and be a generally annoying defensive Pokemon. Yeah, it can run a curse set to make up for its lower physical defense, but it takes so long to get going that it isn't worth it. And even trying to run Curse, Rest, and 2 attacks, and have Rain set up in the back so you can take advantage of hydration is a lot of work for minimal payoff. Assault Vest and 4 attacks is good on the surface, but it doesn't do enough damage to really work. It's just kind of a true do-nothing mon. Hisuian Goodra, however, has some actual good meat on those bones, even if it can't run Toxic and Scald like regular Goodra can. It's got a better defensive typing, is much more physically bulky, although at the cost of some speed, and can at the very least run Acid Armor plus a Body Press set, which will always find a way to come up. Shell Armor to never be crit is always nice, and it can literally run the same Assault Vest plus 4 attack set, but do it better since it has Steel Stab to beat up fairies. Although, honestly, I think they're both not the best pseudo, as shown by the fact that they're the first ones I'm talking about. I live in a world where I have to rank Metagross this low, and that pains me. Yeah, I know it's being stacked up to the cream of the crop type of Pokemon for the most part, but God, this honestly brings me great sadness. But it is what it is. So why is Metagross this low? Well, the other Pokemon on this list are just better. Metagross has been falling off more and more for a while, to the point where that Mega really did kind of carry it. I know I talked about how it fell off in a different video, so to save you time, let's just go over what it can do. Meteor Mash, Ice Punch, Earthquake, and Bullet Punch are all really nice moves. I like to run an agility plus weakness policy set that try to sweep through the opposing team. Although, due to sharing the same weakness as Aegislash, and with Aegislash being just better, it's hard to justify running it over Aegislash. Not to mention the fact that its stats, while good, just haven't been cutting it more and more in the high power Pokemon society we live in. And yeah, I just want to move on. This pains me. The Puppet Master here would hilariously be so much higher up, probably if its base speed wasn't 98. I get why they had to put it slightly below that base 100 speed threshold. It has a good set of attacking stats, isn't exactly frail, and could definitely clean teams if it was afforded the idea of extra speed. However, at the same time, this is your game's whole pseudo, Game Freak. You gotta do what you did with Garchomp in the previous gen and gas the Mon up a little. Give it that base 102 speed stat that would have been really solid back then in exchange for that physical attack no one is going to use, and you have yourself a true menacing pseudo that can stand in the face of Generation 5's immense power creep. But, alas, that's not what we got. And then they made it worse in the next generation with the introduction of a small dog with cute bow ties on its head. All because the Eevee some little girl was raising got a little too happy for its own good. Now, it's responsible for the most Hydreigon casualties. The cause of death? Eardrums blown out by a Pixelate Hyper Voice. How the not even all that mighty had already fallen. Okay, but there are good things about it, right? Well, of course, access to tools like Nasty Plot, and then excellent options like Fire Blast, Flash Cannon, Dark Pulse, and Draco Meteor are nice. It's a solid choice, Scarfer, and it's been setting up behind a substitute while terastallizing to either Poison or Steel. However, why Hydreigon is so low is that every time I've ever had trouble with it, it's really only ever been because of Terra. What is this Pokemon without that neat gimmick to remove its admittedly defensively unfortunate typing? Well, depending on who you are, a Stealth Rock setter and a U-turn pivot. Now we're getting somewhere. Finally, a Pokemon that was truly given the respect it deserves, being handed that solid base 100 speed tier. It's the other main cause of death for the local Hydreigon population. And, simply put, Salamence being faster simply means it will OHKO the Hydreigon and then boost up with Moxie, ready to OHKO the next Hydreigon. But even more maliciously. Yeah, sure, Stealth Rock is gonna force our man on heavy-duty boots, unless your team consists of some of the greatest hazard removal a person could ask for, but that's fine. Salamence is a true threatening presence regardless, not exactly frail, all while toting an attack of 135 like Metagross before it, and then a base 110 special attack. This is a Pokemon that can slap this silly out of you from every side of the spectrum, with moves like Dragon Dance, Outrage, Earthquake, Dual Wing Beat, and Iron Head. Or it can decide to blast you away with attacks like Hurricane, Fire Blast, Draco Meteor, and for some reason, Hydro Pump. It can mix and match its kit at the dime to fit on your team and wreak unopposed havoc if positioned right. A truly perfectly designed Pokemon, including the exploitable weakness to a cold breeze. Now, I'll be honest, I only rate Kommo-o this highly because Clangorous Soul is just a really good move. Clangorous Soul plus Throat Spray turns Kommo-o from what is otherwise hardly even a pseudo to a potent threat capable of systematically slapping any sort of team that happens to lack a Pokemon too stupid to realize that this thing is boosted. So, why isn't it higher? Well, to simply put it, these weaknesses hold it back from being the true staple it wants to be. Flying, Psychic, Ice, Dragon, and God forbid that the well-known Hydreigon Slaughter doesn't accidentally stumble across you when you're walking down a dark alley. The last thing you'll see is those blue soulless eyes before your eardrums are promptly blown out and you wind up in the local Pokemon cemetery. Well, at least half the time. Of course, Terra breathes some new life into it by letting it Terra into a normal type and slap the silly out of you with Boom Burst, Clanging Scales, Drain Punch, Flamethrower, or whatever other stuff you can throw at it. Combine this with an overall solid stat spread, and it's quite the threat. But that means that Kommo-o falls into the carried by some sort of gimmick category more than anything else to me. Alright, now we're reaching a real king. Now, I know tiering-wise, the Mon before it outlifts it and all, and yeah, maybe I am getting a little carried away by placing the former king of the overused tier here. However, there is a legacy here that I simply won't spit on by pretending that this Pokemon deserves to be ranked anywhere below where I put it, even though it is kind of its support that lets it really thrive at this point. Regardless, Tyranitar is still where it was from Gens 2 to 8 for a damn reason. And in Gen 9, while it may live in UU, he's still a good Mon. And access to Knockoff is a great tool. Admittedly, the only true T-Tar nerf is the loss of a good partner for it, since Dracozolt and Excadrill are currently nowhere to be seen. But don't let that fool you. Despite its admittedly really bad typing, the tools it has at its disposal make it a Swiss Army knife that an unprepared team will crumble before. Special T-Tar with Ice Beam, Flamethrower, and Thunderbolt have gone crazy in draft before. I've seen it firsthand. Dragon Dance and trying the sweep with your stabs and Earthquake is pretty good. Support T-Tar with Knockoff, Thunderwave, and Stealth Rock is absolutely a thing. And let me tell you, with Assault Vest and its special defense buff from Sandstream, it stayed in OU just because it could completely obliterate the cursed goldfish. Yeah, it has many weaknesses and a low speed that keep it from being the truly bulky offensive demon it otherwise would be, and Sandstream is kind of a carry at times. But hey, coming in and setting up Sandstream has sometimes been all it's ever needed to do. I love Garchomp, and every day I feel if they just gave it Dragon Dance, it would go back to being the best Pokemon ever. Garchomp is just one of those Pokemon that usually just works, especially now with Scale Shot being added to its kit to boost its speed. And of course, miss when I really need it to land. What does this stupid attack miss? Anyways, Garchomp has truly been one of the all-time greats up until Generation 9, where it languishes in Staraptor's old home of UUBL. The difference is that people still bring Garchomp to matches to this day, as despite its rather blatant weaknesses, such as not a high enough speed anymore, and Iron Valiant and Enamorous exist, and unaware Dondozo walls you to death, Garchomp has the tools to make it work against at the very least the darn fairies, thanks to Terra Steel Ironhead getting the one-up on them. Access to Stab Earthquake is amazing as well. Fire Blast isn't as good as it used to be for it, but Fire Blast is still very much an option on Chain Chomp. It can also serve as a hazard setter with Dragon Tail, but playing that set is a disservice, and we simply shouldn't do that. Base 130 attack, 102 speed, and the ability to live neutral hits when it needs to the most and clean in the late game is the real way to play. I don't think I need to say anymore. Yeah, this is one of those situations where multi-scale and a nice pair of shoes absolutely covers our bro. But honestly, that's fine with me. Dragonite is a fun Pokemon to use, and one I've covered a lot before. So forgive me if this segment is short, because you've heard me say these words before. Dragon Dance, extensive coverage, extreme speed, Terra Normal if you're playing Gen 9 OU, incredible late game cleaner, can mix it up with like Banded Outrage or Leftovers if you have good enough teammates to support you. Encore and Roost are good versatility, and don't get hit by the usual Dragonite weaknesses. If you want any further facts, I have always considered it an excellent partner for Mega Mawile, because Mega Mawile is only weak to ground and fire, which Dragonite easily tanks. And Dragonite is weak to rock, ice, dragon, and fairy, which Mega Mawile easily tanks. Now, on to... oh, come on, man. There have been, like, no new developments in the Baxcalibur meta last I checked. However, I can very much explain why it's only number 2 on this list. While this mon is most definitely one of the most absurdly good pseudos we've had in a while, actually, that's it. It's just really good. Ice Shard for priority, Icicle Spear with loaded dice for damage, Glaive Rush is just outrage but better, Earthquake and Iron Head are nice. It gets Swords Dance, Scale Shot, and Dragon Dance, so you never know what the dude is cooking until you served your dish. It gets both Ice Body and Thermal Exchange, so Will-O-Wisp isn't guaranteed to be safe on it until the ability is confirmed. It's really got a lot of sets it could be running. And God forbid one of those sets is Substitute setup, because one free turn is all Baxcalibur needs to hide behind the sub, get up the D-Dance, and pass tense your entire time. Yeah, it's got plenty of weaknesses like fighting, fairy, steel, and dragon, but those weaknesses don't really mean squat if you pretty much annihilate everything before it has a chance to hit you. It's truly an astounding threat. Anyways, time to go another round with our old friend. This is the most versatile, cool, and most awesome Pokemon ever. Dragapult being the best pseudo is honestly something that you shouldn't be surprised about. How often must I force myself to talk about Dragapult and all the cool things it can do? It's one of the most versatile threats in all of Pokemon. It can run a physically offensive Dragon Dance set, it can run a Hex, D-Darts, Substitute, and Will-O-Wisp set. It can run a set with Curse and Screens to get teammates set up, while getting Chip, while guaranteeing a safe switch-in, plus it can run the usual specs nonsense. And we talked about how Infiltrator will bypass enemy screens and thus turn Alolan Ninetales into a wasted team slot. But I haven't talked about how sticky webs have been popping up more and more thanks to Goldango, and that means that Clear Body is also viable because now its stats can be lowered, including by sticky web. The only thing Dragapult is missing is Poltergeist, which I hope it never gets back, because then it would become even better, thus having one extra tool in its already beyond varied toolkit. Well, those were the pseudos ranked from weakest to strongest. What'd you guys think? Do you agree or disagree? Let me know your thoughts and lists in the comment section below.